elemental releases in Naruto comprise 90% of the jutsu we ever see. A jutsu will either be earth release, fire release, lightning release, wind release, or water release. And now obviously, as we got further into the anime, we got introduced to things like yin and yang release, or things like senjutsu releases. But at the end of the day, when it really boils down to it, what the majority of ninjas in the Naruto universe are using are elemental release ninjutsu. And while opinions about different elemental releases may vary depending on who you're talking to, when it comes to people's favorite elemental release, I find it hard to argue that it's not lightning release. Go ahead, ask anybody if they could have one elemental release what they would want, and the majority of people are gonna tell you lightning release. And while I completely disagree with this choice because lightning release, while it can make you fast, is usually only good at killing people, and something like earth release would be much more practical in the real world, by and large, the most popular of all the elemental releases is lightning. And that's probably because the majority of the coolest characters in the show use lightning primarily. But as lightning is the most offensively minded out of all of the elemental releases, it got me thinking, of all the different people who use lightning release, what are the strongest lightning release jutsu? And honestly, compiling this list was kinda difficult, because there's a lightning release of Konoha, there's a lightning release of the Hidden Cloud. Hell, even Tsunade has very powerful lightning release. And there's actually one lightning release move that's hailed as the strongest lightning release move in the world that you probably don't even know the name of. So I sat down with my little pen and my little paper, and I got to writing on what I believed were the strongest lightning release elemental jutsu. And that's what we're talking about today. But before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys like the sound of my voice ranking and explaining things, then you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I rank and explain things from basically every anime that's not Naruto. We just ranked and explained all of the S-class heroes in One Punch Man. So lightning release, used by Sasuke and Kakashi and A and Killer B and basically all of the ninja from the Hidden Cloud. An incredibly offensive-minded elemental release that can either allow you to summon lightning from the literal sky or make yourself the fastest person on Earth. Lightning release has been arguably the most used out of all of the elemental releases in Naruto, as the Chidori is arguably one of the most common jutsus used in Naruto, while the rasengan itself is just chakra with no elemental nature added to it, until of course we get Rasen Shuriken. But when we consider the lightning releases of all of these myriads of people who use the same elemental release, how do we figure who's using the strongest jutsu? Especially when we consider the multifaceted nature of lightning release. Like I stated earlier, while lightning release is usually used offensively, there is times it's used as a buff. There's even times that it's used in a somewhat support nature. Well, the way I'm going to be ranking our lightning moves today is by how much of a chance they give you to win. And thus things like a buff and destructive power will be looked at through an equal lens, so long as this move gives you a better chance of winning in a fight. So with the rules out of the way, with no further ado, let's get into the top 10 strongest lightning release elemental jutsu. The top 10 is kind of a lie because I want to open up our list with an honorable mention. That honorable mention is going to somebody we've already brought up in this video today, Tsunade. You see, Tsunade is an incredibly high-level medical ninja, and while we've seen very minimal use of elemental releases from Tsunade because she usually relies on her strength and her durability, in arguably the first battle we ever saw from Tsunade, we did see her use lightning release, and in genuinely a really cool and interesting way. See, when Tsunade found herself in combat against Kabuto and Orochimaru, she used a technique against Kabuto called body pathway derangement. And honestly, this technique seems like it fits better in the Hunter x Hunter universe than the Naruto universe. You see, essentially in order to use the technique, Tsunade makes her chakra have the properties of electricity. And by giving her chakra the properties of electricity, she builds an electric field around herself. Now, while this is technically a high-level medical ninjutsu, Tsunade is able to use it offensively. Because with this electrical field, if Tsunade gets her hands on her opponent, she's able to funnel that electricity into their body. And while we've seen people in Naruto get hit with Kirin and Chidori and a bunch of other electrical releases, those electrical releases never seem to mess with the person being hit's nervous system, which I've always found interesting when you consider the fact that the nervous system relies entirely on electrical signaling. This is the exact purpose of this jutsu. You see, Tsunade, by funneling this lightning into her opponent, is able to jumble the brain's ability to send electrical signals. And the problem with that is now the brain can't interact with the nervous system. And the nervous system is what tells the body where and when to move. Once hit with this attack, the opponent can no longer move in a way they want to. In fact, any movement that they try to do, their body will do the exact opposite. So if you try to move your hand, your body will move anything but your hand, usually your leg. And considering the fact that your nervous system isn't something you have to think about, this can shatter somebody. You don't have to think about moving your fingers, it just happens. I mean, of course, you can look at your finger and say bend, but thinking bend finger doesn't bend finger. This is exactly what Tsunade's jutsu capitalizes on. By rewiring your nervous system, you essentially won't be able to move. It's like picking up somebody's controller who plays southpaw, or somebody who uses inverted aim. This would make it a nightmare to walk, let alone fight. Now, obviously, the only time we ever see Tsunade use this, she uses against Kabuto, which is unfair because Kabuto was also a medical genius. Kabuto, with his genius in very controlled chakra control, is able to master how to move without his body signaling in the way he wants it to. But against 98% of people, this technique is basically a one-shot KO. But speaking of killing people in one shot, next up, coming up at number 9 on this list, is Chidori. Well, does that feel low to you? Well, I'm not considering things like Chidori Sharp Spear or Kamui Raikiri, things like that. This is just straight up Raikiri and or Chidori. Because let's be real, Raikiri and Chidori, same thing. Chidori was created by Kakashi when he tried to apply lightning release to a rasengan. While trying to apply lightning release to the rasengan, Kakashi collapsed the rasengan and just concentrated a ton of lightning release in his hand. The sound of all this lightning release in his hand sounded like 1,000 birds. This is why Chidori, when directly translated, is just 1,000 birds. The Chidori in its base form really isn't all that powerful though. I mean, it's said to be the perfect tool for assassinations, even though it's incredibly loud, and that's just because of the sheer speed that comes along with using the Chidori. You see, once the requisite amount of chakra is gathered in one's hands, they thrust at their opponents at an incredibly high speed and try to lunge into their chest with the Chidori. And as this is lightning release, it has a greater cutting ability than any sword in Naruto. Because, as we know, lightning release in the Naruto universe is very sharp, arguably the sharpest thing. Things like the 7 swords of the mist, the Kiba blades, are said to be the sharpest blades ever because they funnel electricity into the blades. We've seen people like Killer Bee and Sasuke funnel electricity into their swords to increase their ability to cut through other swords. So yeah, an incredibly massive amount of lightning release on your hand is arguably the sharpest thing you can wield. Match that with the fact that the Chidori is delivered so quickly that even the user gets tunnel vision from going that speed, and you have the perfect tool for assassination. And when a jutsu can overcome the fact that it sounds like a million birds running into each other and still be considered the perfect tool for assassination, well, you get an idea of how powerful it might be. But in the grand scope of lightning release, the Chidori has seen a ton of upgrades. We've done an entire video on it. And there's also the fact that you need a Sharingan to be able to use the Chidori, because while to the majority of people the Chidori is much too fast to dodge, for those who are able to react to and dodge the Chidori, it leaves you wide open as you have to attack in a straight and very predictable line. Therefore, a Sharingan or possibly a Byakugan is needed in order to counteract the tunnel vision. But Chidori isn't alone at this 10 spot. Sharing the 10 spot with the Chidori is Purple Lightning, but it's kind of a 10A, 10B situation because Chidori is arguably worse than Purple Lightning. See, Purple Lightning was created by Kakashi after the 4th Great Shinobi World War because he lost his Sharingan, but he didn't want to lose Chidori, a jutsu he made and wanted to use. And therefore, based off the Purple Lightning that Kakashi saw Madara use during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he created a new jutsu. This jutsu had all the kill ability of Chidori without the blinding speed, and thus it could be used without a Sharingan because you weren't worried about tunnel vision. The fact that this jutsu can operate in all the ways Chidori can without the crutch of a Sharingan, to me, makes it stronger. But considering the fact that they're basically just the same thing, I'm gonna have them share a spot. Coming in at number 9 is probably something people won't be too happy about, considering the fact that we just put Chidori at number 10, the Vanishing Rasengan. Listen, I'm aware that the Vanishing Rasengan hasn't really had its moment to shine in Boruto, but for all intents and purposes, it is stronger than Chidori. Why, you ask? Well, besides the fact that the Vanishing Rasengan is actually exactly what Kakashi was trying to do in the first place, because the Vanishing Rasengan is a Rasengan with lightning elemental release added to it by Boruto, who did it accidentally, mind you, so take that, Kakashi, I guess. But it's always been an incredibly well-known fact that the Rasengan is stronger than Chidori. That has been hammered into our heads for hundreds of episodes. And sure, sometimes when Naruto and Sasuke collide their Rasengan and Chidori into each other, it seems equal. But harken back to the water tank episode. While the Chidori may have more puncture ability, the Rasengan just has way more in terms of destructive force. I mean, Sasuke never cut the God Tree in half now, did he? But the problem with the Rasengan, obviously until Naruto created the Rasen Shuriken, was that it was stuck to your hand, and there was no speed boost like you got with the Chidori. Boruto has effectively erased that problem. Boruto not only can throw his Rasengan, it becomes invisible when he throws it. Meaning if you don't have something like a Sharingan or a Byakugan or possibly Sage Mode, you're not going to be able to see or sense his Rasengan. And well, obviously sometimes when Boruto uses it, it's not that powerful because Boruto's Rasengan isn't as strong as Naruto's. One day, it will be. And actually, I would argue in the manga right now, it already is. So imagine a thrown rasengan like a Rasen Shuriken, except you can't see it. That is the perfect tool for assassinations. Coming in at number 8, we have a slightly less controversial option here. We have lightning chakra mode. It's about time we take a step out of Konoha when we're talking about lightning release, because after all, lightning release is the specialty of the hidden cloud. As to why black people in media always have to have lightning abilities, I wish I could tell you. Now, lightning chakra mode operates a bit like Tsunade's ability we talked about earlier, except instead of having your chakra have lightning-like abilities, you just cloak yourself in lightning release. Now, this technique is the buff we were talking about, as lightning chakra mode itself really doesn't have anything in terms of kill ability. Activating lightning chakra mode won't kill somebody. It's the boost that come along with it that will. See, essentially by surrounding yourself in more and more lightning chakra, the user gets more and more heightened abilities, specifically taijutsu abilities. These taijutsu abilities come from the fact that the user becomes much physically faster and stronger. In fact, the augmentations in strength are so vast that what they do isn't considered taijutsu, it's considered ninjutsu taijutsu. And users of lightning chakra mode can control just how much lightning they're surrounding themselves with. But the more lightning they use, the stronger they get. But the thing is, it's not just about strength and speed. Even though the speed conferred from this mode does allow the user to use body flicker technique, and the only other 2 techniques on Earth considered faster are flying raijin and Naruto's Jin Cloak. No, outside of strength and speed, lightning chakra mode also confers defensive ability, meaning the majority of physical and elemental release attacks are reflected by this chakra cloak. In fact, the defenses of this chakra mode are so impenetrable that the 4th raikage is surprised when Sasuke's Chidori can get through it a little bit. But even if you do have the ability to penetrate this cloak, the user can move so fast that even the Sharingan can't track them, so probably doesn't matter. But since we're talking about the hidden cloud, let's stick with the hidden cloud with our number 7 entry onto the list, Black Panther. See, Black Panther is a technique we saw used by Darui, but it was actually a technique created by the 3rd raikage that was passed down to Darui. And we know it was passed down to Darui through the 3rd raikage because they both shared the same tattoo on their arm. Darui was the only person the 3rd raikage trusted with enough control over the lightning elemental release to use Black Panther. And for all intents and purposes, Black Panther operates a lot like Lightning Beast's Tracking Fang. Essentially, it's a lightning release that creates black lightning in the form of a Black Panther, while Tracking Fang creates a dog, because Kakashi loves dogs. However, the key difference between Tracking Fang and Black Panther is speed. See, the Black Panther is substantially faster than Tracking Fang, with a speed that allows it to dash between multiple targets in the blink of an eye. And anybody that this Black Panther comes into contact with is shocked, probably fatally. It's a wide-spreading, multi-effective, and incredibly quick lightning release that only 2 people in the history of Naruto have ever been able to use. So yeah, it's gonna make this list. And by the way, I can already hear people saying, well, if Black Panther made it, why didn't Laser Circus? Laser Circus is storm release, not lightning release. It's different. It's technically a Kekkei Genkai. But since we're talking about the 3rd raikage, let's talk about the 3rd raikage, specifically his move, Hell Stab. While Black Lightning and Black Panther were incredibly strong abilities that the 3rd raikage had access to, both of them paled in comparison to what was hailed as his strongest technique, Hell Stab. You see, Hell Stab operates very similarly to Chidori. Essentially, it saw the 3rd raikage concentrating a massive amount of lightning release into his hand. However, it was less about concentrating lightning release into his hand and more into his fingertips. And that distinction is important, because the amount of fingers that the 3rd raikage used to use Hell Stab were very important. See, while the Chidori is just amassing lightning chakra in your hand and moving in a straight line, the Hell Stab offered a certain level of flexibility to the 3rd raikage. Almost always used in conjunction with lightning chakra mode, the 3rd raikage would already have incredibly boosted speed and taijutsu prowess. However, on top of that, with an extra amount of lightning release concentrated around his hands, he could choose just how destructive he was feeling that day. Between 4 fingers, 3 fingers, and 1 finger, there were massive differences. His 4-finger Hell Stab was said to be strong enough to break through robust defenses with relative ease. His 3-finger Hell Stab was strong enough to stab through malleable sources and be used as a sword. See, this is one of the key differences between the Hell Stab and the Chidori. While the Chidori is a thrusting weapon, the Hell Stab can be used as a blade. And thus, by swinging his arm in a circle, the 3rd raikage would be able to hit all of the opponents around him. On top of this, the Hell Stab can also be used to dissipate attacks, meaning if there was a ninjutsu or a taijutsu attack heading towards the 3rd raikage, he could dissipate it with his Hell Stab. But when the 3rd raikage was getting genuinely serious, he would only use one finger, which is weird because when I'm getting genuinely serious, I use two. But the thing is, regardless of how many fingers the third raikage is using for his hell stab, the chakra remains the same. And therefore, the less fingers he's using, the more concentrated the chakra gets. With the one finger hell stab, the third raikage was able to cut off all 8 of Gyuki's tails in one fell swoop. It was also able to cut through his very own lightning release chakra mode. And considering the fact that his lightning release chakra mode was so powerful, it was referred to as the ultimate shield, in that nothing could penetrate it. Being able to penetrate his own chakra mode with his ultimate spear is saying something. And thus with this hell stab, the third raikage both had a perfect defense in his lightning chakra mode and the perfect offense, which is why he is my favorite non-Hokage Kage. But speaking of Hokages, let's head back to Konoha and talk about our 5th entry on this list, Kirin. See, Kirin is an incredibly powerful lightning release jutsu made by Sasuke, and it operates very differently from every other jutsu on this list. Because this jutsu does not create lightning from one's own chakra, this jutsu controls lightning, real life lightning, and thus things like a Rinnegan that can absorb ninjutsu cannot absorb Kirin, because Kirin in itself isn't a jutsu. It's kind of like applying shape control to an actual elemental thing, kind of like a water dragon jutsu made from actual water. And while this sort of thing isn't rare amongst other elemental releases, it is rare amongst lightning release, because lightning's not just kicking around, you know? This jutsu works by Sasuke pulling lightning out of thunderclouds down to the ground exactly where he wants it. And this lightning hits the ground in 1/1000th of a second, as of course it's lightning and therefore incredibly quick. Actually, that makes it one of the fastest jutsus in Naruto. The problem is this jutsu only works if there's thunderclouds above you. If there's not thunderclouds above you, you have to make thunderclouds. And in order to make thunderclouds, a cold pressure front has to hit a warm pressure front, which means you have to use incredibly powerful fire release. Now, usually Sasuke achieves this by using Amaterasu, but it still requires an insane amount of prep time to get the thunderclouds formed to use Kirin. However, once the thunderclouds are above you, it requires very little chakra to pull out the thunder and control it. And once you do pull this off, it is one of the most destructive jutsu in the show. When used against Itachi, it almost obliterated his Susanoo. His Susanoo, which is considered to be one of the most impregnable defenses in the entire universe. The problem was, Kirin is kind of the perfect counter to Itachi's Susanoo. As the Yata mirror can't reflect an actual element, it can only reflect elemental releases. But the problem is, after using Kirin, these thunderclouds dissipate. Meaning, once again, you have to form all new thunderclouds to use Kirin again. So Kirin's a bit like a musket. You don't want to get hit with it, but as long as you dodge it one time, you're probably safe. Also, fun fact, Kirin means giraffe, so as to why it's a dragon, your guess is as good as mine. Whose cries are said to be musical scales and footprints are perfect circles. So as to how it ended up being one of the most destructive jutsus in Naruto, I genuinely do not know. But since we're talking about Sasuke, let's stick with Sasuke and get to our number 4 entry on the list, Susanoo Chidori. What do I need to say other than Susanoo plus Chidori? It's a Chidori, but the hand is a Susanoo's hand, meaning that the user of the Chidori really doesn't have to worry about moving in a straight line, because even if you mount a counterattack, how are you gonna get through the Susanoo? That being said, a piercing weapon on a hand the size of a school bus, kind of overkill. But it's an incredibly strong lightning release, so, you know, number 4 spot. And since we're talking about giving Chidoris to Susanoos, next up on our list is obviously the Kamui raikiri. While technically Kakashi never used this ability in his Susanoo, he gained the ability to use the Kamui raikiri after going DMS, Dual Monkey Kill Sharingan, and thus one could argue that this ability came along with his Susanoo. See, after receiving the last vestiges of Sage of Six Paths power from Obito, Kakashi awoke to a dual EMS. A dual EMS where he had both of the Kamui eyeballs, meaning not only could he teleport other people into the Kamui dimension, he could teleport himself. And Kakashi almost instantly made this brand new ability just his own, as he found a way to apply Kamui to his raikiri. Once again, while we never saw this technique applied to a Susanoo, he probably could have done it. He was just too busy using Kamui Shuriken, which is inherently much cooler. Kicker of this jutsu is outside of the fact that Kakashi was almost god level powerful in this fight, and therefore would probably be able to land his raikiri whenever and however he wanted to, on top of getting your back blown out like Rin with the raikiri. If you get hit with this raikiri, you immediately get warped to the Kamui dimension. So not only do you now have a hole in whatever part Kakashi hits you with this raikiri, you're also in a dimension that is inescapable, so long as you don't have Flying Thunder God or a Rinne Sharingan. And because of that, even if Kakashi slightly grazes you, once again, you're going to the Kamui dimension, which for all but like 4 people is an insta-kill. And that's assuming you survive the massive amount of lightning release that just got drilled through your chest. The only thing worse than getting a new hole to breathe from is going to a dark, black, dimensionless void. But hey, who knows? Maybe you'll get a friend there when Kakashi hits another person with his Kamui raikiri. But we're not quite done talking about those with Sharingans quite yet, because coming in at number 2, we have Indra's arrow. And I know what you're saying,
Nick, did you honestly just say that Indra's arrow is not the strongest lightning release ninjutsu on Earth?
Yeah, I did. And it's because I know everything. But before we get to thinking about number 1, let's talk about number 2. Indra's arrow is Sasuke's most powerful attack. It's what happens when Sasuke funnels the power of 9-tailed beasts into a Susanoo in the form of lightning release. Sasuke generates a bow with a Susanoo and places all of his lightning release into an arrow. This technique is said to be the pinnacle of his offensive ability, and it is genuinely no joke. This technique was able to nullify Naruto's 6 paths ultra big ball Rasen Shuriken, which is also said to be Naruto's strongest offensive move. The reason that's impressive is that lightning release has an inherent inferiority to wind release, meaning that in this matchup, Sasuke was technically ill-matched, meaning that Indra's arrow is actually stronger than 6 paths ultra big ball Rasen Shuriken. But the fact that Sasuke is only ever able to use his ability while pulling on the powers of the 9-tailed beast speaks to just how hard it is to pull off. I mean, he doesn't have the 9-tailed beast. He'll never be able to use it again. And even though it is technically stronger than Naruto's 6-pass Ultra Big Ball Rasen Shuriken, that was Naruto using half of Kurama's power, being able to nullify Sasuke's strongest offensive output. So while Indra's arrow could probably kill thousands of people in one go, the lack of reproducibility of it is really a pretty big knock against it. But it is a pretty cool reference to Indra, the Hindu god of war and thunder, and how he used the rainbow to shoot bolts of lightning. So Nick, if Indra's arrow, Sasuke's strongest offensive jutsu, is not number 1 on the list, then what is? I mean, Sasuke is without a doubt the strongest lightning release user in Naruto's history, right? And honestly, you'd be correct. Sasuke is probably the strongest lightning release user in Naruto's history, except for maybe Madara. But that doesn't make Indra's arrow the strongest ever lightning release jutsu. No, the strongest ever lightning release jutsu is a little jutsu by the name of Limelight. Oh, you've never heard of it, or you don't remember what that is? Well, that's because this jutsu comes from filler, specifically Naruto Shippuden episode 66. You see, Limelight is a lightning elemental release that requires 4 users to pull off. And if these 4 users stand on all 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, and concentrate and connect all of their lightning release towards each other, they can pull off a jutsu called Limelight. This jutsu was referred to by Asuma to be the strongest lightning release jutsu ever created, as if pulled off correctly, it is able to incinerate entire villages like Konoha to ash in seconds. Essentially, anything under the lightning net created by Limelight gets reduced to ashes. And while in Asuma's explanation, we see Konoha being destroyed, which implies that Limelight could one-shot the entirety of Konoha, there's no reason for us to believe that if those 4 people used more lightning release and stretched out further, they couldn't destroy more. This means that Limelight is on par with a super-powered Diva Path Almighty Push. And even Almighty Push just kind of squished and pushed things. We are talking about being reduced to ash. In essence, we're talking about the most widely breaching dust release of all time. So while yes, is this from filler, and also is it technically never used? Absolutely. Does it also require 4 people? Yes. Did I put it on the list so Sasuke wouldn't be number 1? No! Why would I do that? I just know a lot about Naruto, and I know what is actually the strongest lightning release. Duh, guys. What do you guys think? Is there any lightning release jutsus that I missed? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I'm aware I could have added things like Chidori's Sharp Spear and all the other variations of Chidori, but we already did a Chidori ranking video. I wasn't gonna make this whole video another one of those.